Thank you so much for joining us online for Revive. I'm Ryan Keaton, the student pastor here. We would love for you to join us live on Wednesday nights at 6:30 p.m. right here in the fellowship hall of our church at 50 Stanford Avenue. Tonight's lesson is in our series, What I Believe About Blank, as I talk about what I believe about stewardship. So here's the lesson, What I Believe About Stewardship. We are continuing a series that if you've maybe just joined us, or if you've been here the whole time, just a little quick recap of what's been going on. So we are doing a series called What I Believe About Blank. And so we've been talking about the ordinances of the church, the different areas and aspects of the church that you have probably heard about, or you have maybe even participated in, but you might not know exactly why or what's the purpose or all of that. So we've talked about church membership. We've talked about the Lord's Supper, and we were actually able to take the Lord's Supper. We have talked about baptism. We've talked about what I believe about my story, and you have heard different testimonies from some of your leaders, and the whole purpose behind that is for you to see that you're not the only one who struggles. You're not the only one who goes through things, and also so you can see that we're here for you, and just like you, your adult leaders in the room have gone through a lot of stuff, and we have struggled through things, and instead of that making us, worse Christians, it's actually strengthened our faith. And so through your trials and through your troubles, your faith can be strengthened as well. Tonight we're going to be talking about the idea of stewardship. What I believe about stewardship. And this whole idea is, what do you do with the things that you are given? Are you being responsible with the things that God is entrusting to you? Maybe it's your time. Maybe it's your money. Maybe it's the gifts or talents that God has just given you, or the opportunities laid before you. So we're going to talk about stewardship tonight. And the first question I just want you to kind of think about, just in your head, don't have to answer it out loud, not that you would anyways. But the question is this: what is one thing you would struggle giving up if asked? So if I was to ask you, you have to give up this thing, and you can't do it anymore, you can't participate in that anymore, what would be difficult for you? Maybe it's a sport. Maybe it's a hobby. Maybe it's a person that you talk to. Maybe it's like soft drinks or something. Like if I told you got to give up Mountain Dew, you're like, no, I'm out. I'm out on that. Or video games, Fortnite, or whatever. Apex, is that a new thing? I don't know. I'm behind the times on those. But whatever it is, what is something that if you were asked to give up, you would have a hard time doing? And ultimately, we need to think about that. We give up a lot of things that God calls us to do. We give up a lot of great things. We give up the best things in life, ultimately because we settle for good enough things. And we miss out on a lot of blessings sometimes because we have so many things taking up the resources that God's entrusting us with that we're being poor stewards. We're not being responsible with what God has given us. So maybe that is, you're so busy with your time. You have crammed your schedule so tight that you can't go and do the things God's calling you to do. Or maybe in that, maybe God has gifted you with an athletic ability or an artistic ability or a musical ability. And you've made it about yourself and not about God. So you're being a poor steward of that gift, that talent, that drive that God has given you. And instead of promoting His name, you've just been promoting your own name. Maybe you in here do have a job. We're going to be talking about tithing a little bit. So maybe you haven't earned money yet, but eventually one day you're going to be getting a paycheck. And so are you, with the money that God has given you and He's blessed you with, are you giving back to Him how He should? So we're going to talk about, it's actually called the parable of the talents. And I'm sure you've maybe heard of this story before. But if not, we're going to find principles from this story tonight where we can see, how can I be a better steward of what God has given me? And this is a topic that it might seem a little deep, but it's something that you need to go on ahead and start thinking about, whether you're 12 years old or whether you're 18 years old or whether you're 40 years old. This idea of stewardship is important. We actually talked about this exact same topic last night at Common Grounds. And so this is a topic that, we're talking to and with the 20-somethings of our community, and they need to hear it, but it's hopefully a foundation that you start laying right now so that when you get that age and somebody talks to you about that, you're like, you know what? That's something that I set in my heart, and I set a foundation at a young age, and I made wise choices.
Because whether you realize it or not, the choices that you're starting to make right now will literally set you up for the rest of your future. Because if you know, in a few years when you become manager of your money and your time, make poor choices, before you know it, you're going to be strapped with the debt and just all kind of things. So we're going to talk tonight about hopefully how you can make the right choices starting right now. So we're going to be in Matthew 25, and we're going to see this parable, and then we're going to look at a few principles from that we can take from it. So join me in reading. It'll be on the screens. And it says this: "For it is just like a man going on a journey. He called his own slaves and turned over his possessions to them. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, and to another 1, to each according to his own ability. Then he went on a journey, and immediately the man who had received 5 talents went, put them to work, and earned 5 more. In the same way, the man who was given 2 talents earned 2 more. But the man who received 1 talent went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. After a long time, the master of those slaves came and settled accounts with him. The man who had received 5 talents approached, presented 5 more talents, and said, 'Master, you gave me 5 talents. Look, I've earned 5 more talents.' His master said to him, 'Well done, good and faithful slave. You were faithful over a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Share your master's joy.' Then the man who had 2 talents also approached him. He said, 'Master, you gave me 2 talents. Look, I've earned 2 more talents.' His master said to him, 'Well done, good and faithful slave. You were faithful over a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Share your master's joy.' Then the man who had received 1 talent also approached and said, 'Master, I know you are a difficult man, reaping where you have not sown and gathering where you haven't scattered seed. So I was afraid and went off and hid your talent in the ground. Look, you have what is yours.' But his master replied to him, 'You evil, lazy slave. If you knew that I reap where I haven't sown and gather where I haven't scattered, then you should have deposited my money with the bankers, and when I returned, I would have received my money back with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to the one who has 10 talents. For to everyone who has more, more will be given, and he will have more than enough. But from the one who does not have, even what he has will be taken away from him. And throw this good-for-nothing slave into the outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." Tonight we see 4 things on this idea of stewardship, or what I believe about stewardship. And the first thing we see is the importance of stewardship. So the first question I kind of want you to think about in your mind on this point is, why does realizing the significance of a situation matter? And realizing the importance of a situation matters because of how you react or respond in that situation. So for example, and I'm sure you've done this before, but how many of you have been sitting there and you've been talking, you've been laughing, you've been joking up, and somebody's like, "Shh, we're praying," and you're like, "Oh gosh, I messed up." Like, have you ever done that before? Like, you didn't realize the seriousness in that situation. But then you've probably also seen where people are just like super stern and strict and like, knots on a log, and like it's supposed to be like a happy, joyous time, and they're just being like a joy sucker, like a fun sucker, like they're just the biggest lame dud. Like, just imagine yourself on Wednesday nights when we go to play a game. Like, there's also that moment too, like you don't react to the situations like you should. It should be a fun and joyous time, and rather you would just like be a sapsucker and not do anything at all. And so you have those 2 extremes, right? Knowing the importance of a situation. Well, I think a lot of people, they miss out on being good stewards because they don't realize the importance of it. Maybe right now you're not being a good steward of the time that you're given because you don't realize how important it is at 12 years old, at 18 years old, to manage your time well. You are given more time right now, and I know that that'll blow some of your minds because your schedule is so packed, but you have more free time now than you'll have the rest of your life. You will never have this much free time ever again. Now, what you do with that time is ultimately your choice. If you fill it with friends, you fill it with sports, you fill it with band, or you fill it with art, or whatever your passion is, whatever you fill your time with, ultimately you're a steward of that. Are you making wise choices now, or are you just learning useless habits that you'll never use again after you graduate? Or the money you get, or whatever. Maybe right now you're not realizing the importance of your life and your testimony. There's a common theme throughout everybody who has gotten up on this stage and shared their what I believe about my story. And that common theme is that they regret that they didn't take more serious their relationship with Jesus when they were younger. Time and time and time again, the leaders that have stood before you have expressed a sense of regret or remorse because they saw an opportunity that they missed or didn't take full advantage of. And you're in that moment right now. It's not too late for you. It's not too late for you to realize the importance and to become a better steward. You can start today. There's a saying, and I think I've said this before in here, but it comes up like every time I go on my online banking. And the saying is this: when's the best time to plant a tree? Well, the best time to plant a tree would have been 10 years ago, 20 years ago. But when's the second best time to plant a tree? Right now. And that ultimately in the banking world is like your investments. Like the best time to have started your retirement fund or to save money would have been years ago. But you can't go back. You can't change yesterday. But what you can change is your actions today. And how that applies to us and our stewardship is you can't go back and be a better Christian yesterday. You can't go back and be a better Christian this morning. But what you can do is say, God, today I'm going to realize the importance of the things that you've given me, the resources you've given me, the life you've given me. And I'm going to start taking that more serious. I'm going to start taking that more important. You see, the master delivered work to be done while he was away, and 2 of the 3 servants realized the importance of this work. They realized that the master left them with a responsibility. Because ultimately the master, the boss, the guy in charge, he went away on a trip. And he was gone. And he left work to be done. And ultimately, he wanted that work to continue on in his absence, just like he was there. He pretty much entrusted that this work is important, but I'm going to trust that you'll carry it out even when I'm not here. And so 2 of the 3 realized the importance, and 1 didn't. So the first thing we see is the importance of stewardship. The second thing we see is the insignificance in stewardship. The insignificance. The word insignificant basically means it's not that important, which almost seems like an oxymoron or the opposite of the first point. But we're not saying that stewardship is insignificant. What we're saying is that there are things about stewardship that aren't important. And ultimately in this story, we see that what is not important in stewardship is how much the servants were given. The master did not come back and judge the servants or slaves based on how much they had, but what they did with how much they had. So many of us, we give excuses on not serving God because, well, God, I just don't have as many gifts and talents as that other person. So, God, I'm not going to serve you as much because I don't have a good singing voice, or I'm kind of shy in front of people, so there's no way I could talk from stage, or I'm just not very personable, so I just can't go walk up to people and just start a conversation. And so instead of being a good steward of what God has given us, we're like that third slave and blame our master for what he hasn't given us, and we don't do what we're supposed to do. Ultimately, what each slave was given was insignificant in the matter. Because the master didn't come back and applaud the one who had 10 more than the one who had 4. They both doubled what they had, but it was very different what they had. 10 and 4 is a big difference. Like, you can realize that. But he praised both of them. He didn't praise them on what they had. He didn't praise them with, how big it was. He praised them with the faithfulness of the little that they had, of what they were given. And God has given you your own set of skills, abilities. He's given you the family that you've been in. And whether you feel like you've been dealt a bad hand or not, God has entrusted you with your life. There is nobody else that has the life that you have. Nobody else has been given the opportunities that you've been given. Nobody else has been given the skills and the personality and the brain and the relationships. Nobody in this world has those same things that you have. And ultimately, it's insignificant the amount that you think you have. Ultimately, we're called to be good stewards of it. And one day we are going to be judged on our stewardship. And so we have to see the importance. We have to stop making excuses because it's insignificant. God wants us to be faithful with what we have. Third, we see the ignorance of stewardship. The ignorance of stewardship. The third slave ultimately was a poor steward of the money he was given because he was ignorant of his master. We don't see the other two servants say anything about their master's character or their master's persona or his personality or anything. But this one slave, instead of doing the right thing, instead of being a faithful steward, he would rather blame his master for being cruel and wicked and ultimately a thief and dishonest. And the master comes back and asks him a question like, well, if you think that's really who I am, then why wouldn't you be a better steward of my money? Like, if you think I'm so wicked and cruel, you would think that that would, encourage you even more to be good with this. But instead, you ultimately don't know me. And the servant, the slave, because of his ignorance of who his master was and the importance of the stewardship, he was a poor steward. He didn't do anything with it. He buried his money in the ground and didn't do a thing about it. And to be honest, if we look at our own lives, you and I are bad stewards because we're ignorant of the opportunities that God has given us. I know that in my life growing up and all of those different things, it all goes back to ignorance. It all goes back to just, I was so stupid that I just decided to do what I wanted to do rather than what I knew God wanted me to do. And I think a lot of us, we don't give of our time and our resources because we're ignorant of the blessings that we'll receive from that. We said that we were going to talk about tithing. A lot of people, they don't tithe and give to the church, and it ultimately stems back to they have an ignorance of what their tithe does. They don't have any idea when they put their money in the offering plate what it goes to. And so instead of being a faithful tither, one day you're going to have a job, you're going to have a family, and hopefully you're still in church. And the Bible, it commands us that we give 10% of what God has blessed us with in our income. And so you might not know, but ultimately it tells us to give sacrificially. But 10% is the baseline. But if we don't know where it goes, I think that's why a lot of people don't give. And so I know that we have a room that's full of a lot of different denominations and a lot of different backgrounds and churches, and I'm thankful that all of you have come together tonight on Wednesday night, and I'm not promoting any one over the other, but I just want to kind of educate all of us a little bit on at least what, us as Southern Baptists, me as a Southern Baptist, what we do with our tithe, just so you're aware, just so you don't fall into this ignorance, because it's actually a really cool thing what our tithe as a Southern Baptist, what it does. Now, I've been raised as a Baptist my entire life, and I'm not pushing that at all, but what I am saying is that I don't think, and this is not me being biased, it's just the honest truth. If you were to look, there's nothing else like the cooperative program that Southern Baptists have. There's not another working together arm of any religious or secular organization that moves money and helps people out like the cooperative program does through the Southern Baptists. Maybe that's a term you've heard before. Maybe it's not, but ultimately, the cooperative program does this. It means that when you give your money in the offering plate, there's some churches and some denominations and some places that when you give your money in the offering plate, it goes to pay your staff and it goes to turn lights on and water in the bathrooms and things like that. And that's where the money stops. It doesn't go any farther than just your church. But as a Southern Baptist and us here at First Baptist, your offering goes far beyond that, because as a cooperative church in the cooperative program, when we give, our money is distributed all throughout the world. And so we have a diagram here I want you to look at that will be up on the screen, and there's no way that you can read all of those tiny print. But if you go to imb.org, you can write that down on your sheet and go there later, and it shows this giving thing. And so pretty much what I want you to learn about is this. The cooperative program was started in 1925. So almost 100 years ago, Southern Baptists voted in this idea of cooperative program. And it's all the idea of we think that we can bless the world better and we can fulfill God's commission in the world better by working together with other churches. And so while First Baptist is blessed to have 700 or 800 members and a $1.4 million budget, we have churches all over Henderson and Decatur County who have smaller congregations and have smaller budgets. But the thing is, when we all cooperate together, each church can be effective for the kingdom. And so us as First Baptist, we are a part of what is called the Beach River Baptist Association, which is connected with 39 other churches in our community. And so when you put money in the offering plate, yes, your money does go to pay the staff and turn the lights on and help us have TVs like this and do trips and all of those things. So keep giving to that because that's how I get my paycheck. But it goes far beyond just that as well. When you put your money in the offering plate, it also goes to the Beach River Baptist Association to be distributed to these other churches all around who don't have as much money, don't have as much resources, so they can do backyard Bible clubs, so they can reach their community. But it goes even farther than the Beach River Baptist Association. It goes to the Tennessee Baptist Convention. And so in the Tennessee Baptist Convention, the dollars you give in the offering plate right here in Lexington, Tennessee, will also go to help plant churches in Memphis and Nashville and Knoxville and Chattanooga. It'll help revitalize churches that are dying and help them grow because they don't have the resources. But not only does your money impact our church here and our county and our state, it goes to the North American Mission Board. And your money that you give helps plant churches in Seattle, Washington, and New Mexico, and New York City. But not only does your money impact the local church and your association and your state and the North American missions, but it also goes to the International Mission Board. And so you giving money in the offering plate in Lexington, Tennessee helps send missionaries to third world countries all around the world. So just an example of what we gave last year through First Baptist Church, we give 12% of our undesignated funds. So we have a $1.4 million budget. This is all information that you don't know, but I want you to see the big picture of this, that we don't give because a lot of times we're just ignorant of where it goes, and I want you to know where your money goes. Last year, we gave $168,000 to the cooperative program. So $168,000 from our church went to our association, the state, the nation, the world. But then we gave $239,000 to just missions, to help people, to serve people. That's far greater and beyond ourselves. And we can't do that without everybody giving their part. They explain the cooperative program like a river. When a lot of people give and it's a mighty flowing stream, then a lot of places can be blessed with it. I imagine the Mississippi, how a lot of times, I don't know if you've ever walked up to it, but it's just like so powerful. And a lot of times it overflows the banks and you just see that a lot of things are blessed and can happen because this mighty river runs through it. You get power and electricity and all of these different things. But just like a river, when the resources stop coming to it and it dries up, things around it dying. It's the same with the cooperative program. If you and I stop giving money to our churches, we can't send missionaries overseas. We can't, and in this breakdown in this sheet, it shows that, you give to your church and then 45 to 90% stays in state, and then you have 50% that goes to other entities like the North American Mission Board. So me and Rebecca, we were able to go one summer to West Colorado and serve with a church plant for 5 weeks, and Rebecca was there for like 8 to 10 weeks. And we were able to do that and not have to pull out of our own pocket, college students who didn't have money, who already had to pay for college. Your cooperative program or your parents' cooperative program dollars sent us out there that bought our plane ticket and paid for our insurance so that we could go and do those things. And we have benefited from that. We talked about Christian colleges, and you're going to have the opportunity in a couple of weeks on a Sunday to hear about getting a Christian education. The cooperative program goes to help make private Christian colleges more affordable. While places like Union University are very expensive, they're expensive because they're private and they don't receive government fund and aid. And so what makes it as affordable as it is cooperative program dollars that you and I give so that people can have a Christian education. And so your money, your dollar, when you put it in the offering plate, as a cooperative Southern Baptist, man, it goes to make a difference all around the world. And I truly believe that if people weren't ignorant of what tithing was, they would give me. Because I don't know about you, but hearing that if I put $1 in the offering plate, it not only impacts Lexington, but it can impact getting Bibles into China and sending missionaries to the huts of Africa, that excites me. That excites me to know that I can give here and impact all around the world. And a lot of people, they are poor stewards of not only time, but of money because they're ignorant of it. They don't know what it goes to. They don't know what it impacts. And so tonight, I hope that we have maybe learned a little bit about that so that we can give better in our money, so that we can know. And maybe you can even go home and tell your parents, did you know that if I give my money through a cooperative Southern Baptist church, it goes to impact all these things? You might blow your parents' mind. They might not even know where their tithe goes. But I'm excited to be a part of that. And so there's a question on the sheet, and that is, why is ignorance not always bliss? And the idea of bliss is joyful. Why is being oblivious to your surroundings and just dumb about things not always joyful? Like for me, I made the comment the other day in staff meeting when they were talking about watching the news. I said, I don't watch the news because ignorance is bliss. You know, it's very easy sometimes to just get so depressed because you see everything going on in the world. And so sometimes ignorance to some of those things, it can be, you know, you just have a better outlook on life because you don't see people being murdered and killed every 15 seconds on the news. But here in stewardship, being ignorant ultimately doesn't lead to joy, because we see in this story that the ones who were faithful stewards, they said that they could share in their father's joy. They could share in their master's blessing. And so you and I, we will miss out on the blessings God has for us if we're poor stewards. That's what this is telling us. And so we see the importance of stewardship, the insignificance in stewardship, the ignorance of stewardship, and then finally the insight after stewardship. The insight after stewardship. We see the important truth in this story that your stewardship matters, and you're going to be judged by how you are a good steward. And this whole idea of giving is just realizing why you give. And a lot of people don't give because they first never received. And I, as a Christian, want to be a generous giver of my time and of my money and of my abilities because I realize what God gave me. And a lot of you are sitting here and you're wondering, Ryan, why would I give of my time? Why would I give of my money? Why would I give of my abilities? And you ask those questions because you either don't know or you've forgotten the great sacrifice that God made on our behalf. It ultimately all points back to Jesus. Everything points back to Jesus. And we will be better stewards when we remember the sacrifice that God made on our behalf. We can give. We have the opportunity to give because God gave his son Jesus to us to give us an opportunity for freedom. Outside of that, we were dead in our trespassing and sin. Outside of God's forgiveness, we're separated from him. We don't have a choice. Tonight, you have a choice to be a good steward, to live a life that matters, to live a life full of purpose and hope, and a life that will make an impact and a difference in other people's lives. I don't know about you, but I want my life to make an impact. I don't want to just die and be put in the ground and just waste away into dirt and dust. Like, I want my life to mean something, and I hope that you do too. And your life can make a difference if you realize this insight of stewardship, that I want to give to others because of what God has given to me. Because the truth of the matter is, you can't outgive God. You can't do it. You can try to, and you'll be blessed through it, but you can't outgive God. The more that you give to him, the more that he will bless you. And that's not like some kind of like you give $100 in the offering plate, you'll get a Ferrari next year type of thing. But that's just a biblical truth of when you are faithful to what God has given to you, he will continue to bless you. Because we see in this story that the servants who were given these things, when they gave back in return and made the most of it, they received greater blessing. And the truth of the matter is this too. Just like the servants in their story where their master has gone away and then he came back and they were judged by their actions, the same is true with you and I. Our master, Jesus, he's went away. He's in heaven right now. But we're promised that one day he'll either come back to us or we'll die and we'll go to him. But one day we will stand before him and have to take an account of what we did with our resources. And he'll either look at us and say, well done, my good and faithful servant, experience or join with me in my joy, or he'll say that you are a wicked slave. And he'll say, depart from me, I never knew you. And that is a strong truth tonight that you need to think about in your own life. Have I been a good steward of my own life? Have I first given my life to Jesus? Because if you haven't given your life to him and received, you can't give. So tonight, as the band comes up in just a minute to start our last song, I want you to really think about, is that something you've started? Is that something you have peace about? Is that something that you can say, I can be a good steward of what God has given me? Maybe you have given your life to Jesus, but maybe you're not realizing the importance and the significance of the decisions you make each and every day. Maybe tonight during the invitation, you can just ask God to show you. God, show me how I can point others to you better. Maybe you're a great athlete. Maybe you're a great artist. Maybe you're great in music or drama, or you're creative or whatever. Man, use those gifts and abilities God has given you to point others to him. Don't make it about yourself, because if I know one thing, is this: middle school and high school is about promoting your name. Everybody does whatever they can to promote their own name, even if it means stepping on people along the way, pushing people down along the way. And that's a miserable, empty life to live. That's a life I lived all throughout my middle school and high school career. Yeah, I followed Jesus. Yeah, I did all these things. But I put myself above his plan for me so many times. And I don't want you to stand up here 10, 15, 20 years from now talking to a group about your story and say, you know what? I'm following Jesus now, but in middle school and high school, I didn't follow him because I didn't realize the importance. I wasn't a good steward of my time. You can right that wrong tonight. You can't go back and change what you lived yesterday, but you can be a better steward today. So what will we do with the resources we've been given? Will we continue to use them for ourselves, or will we give them back to God?